Imagine this. You're standing in front of thousands. Bright lights, cameras rolling. Every word you say echoes far beyond the room. And you know before you even open your mouth that half the world wants to hear you. And the other half wants to silence you. That's the reality for Charlie Kirk. Love him or hate him, you cannot deny this. He has become one of the most outspoken voices in America today, especially when it comes to faith, culture, and truth, and because of that, he lives under constant fire. But here's the shocking part. None of this should surprise us, because long before Charlie Kirk or any modern figure stood on a stage, the prophets of Scripture already told us this would happen. They said in the last days, truth would be hated. Those who speak boldly would be attacked. The voices who refuse to compromise would be mocked, censored, persecuted. And yet, they would not be silenced. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to connect the dots between the fire Charlie Kirk faces today and the fire prophets like Jeremiah, Amos, and Isaiah faced thousands of years ago. And by the end of this video, you may realize that what's happening right now is not random, it's prophetic. But first, let's be honest. Charlie Kirk is controversial. He doesn't tiptoe around sensitive topics. He calls out corruption, moral decay, and cultural lies. He challenges both politics and worldview, pointing people back to biblical truth in a time when truth is no longer popular. And for that, he's labeled dangerous. Think about it. Why is it that in a world that celebrates freedom of speech, the loudest calls are often to silence those who speak from a biblical worldview? The prophets saw this coming. Isaiah wrote, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness." Isaiah 5:20. Sound familiar? We live in a time where moral lines are blurred, where culture celebrates what God condemns and mocks what God blesses. And anyone who dares to confront that reversal becomes a target. Jeremiah was one of them. He was called the weeping prophet because every time he spoke God's truth to his nation, they tried to silence him. He was beaten, thrown into a pit, accused of treason. Why? Because he dared to say this nation has turned from God. Fast forward thousands of years, and what do we see? Voices like Charlie Kirk standing on stages saying almost the same thing, and we must turn back to God. We must rebuild morality. We must stand for truth. And just like Jeremiah, the backlash is intense. Here's the hook most people miss. This isn't just about politics, it's about prophecy. The Bible says in 2 Timothy 4:3, "For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them teachers who say what their itching ears want to hear." That time isn't coming. It's here. And every time someone like Charlie Kirk refuses to bow to cultural pressure, we see this prophecy unfolding before our eyes. Now pause with me. What does this mean for you? Because it's easy to watch someone like Charlie Kirk on a big stage and think, well, that's his battle. But the truth, this is your battle too. Jesus said in John 15:18, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first." That means every believer, whether on a platform or in private, will face the same fire when they stand for truth. So the real question isn't just, why is Charlie Kirk under fire? The real question is, am I ready for the fire when it comes to me? Because it will. It might not look like public attacks. It might be in your classroom, your workplace, your own family. But the moment you refuse to compromise truth, the fire will come. And that's why we need to learn from the prophets. Jeremiah didn't stop speaking. Isaiah didn't stop declaring. Amos didn't stop warning. They burned with a message that was bigger than their comfort. And that's what we're seeing again today. Charlie Kirk is not a prophet in the biblical sense, but his voice, like many others, is a reminder that truth will always be under attack, and the louder the attack, the clearer the fulfillment of prophecy. Still with me, good. Because in part 2, we're going to look at the cost of being a truth teller in the last days, and how what we see in Charlie Kirk's battles is just a glimpse of what the church will face worldwide. And more importantly, we'll see why the prophets said persecution is not the end of the story, but the beginning of revival. If this resonates with you, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment. I will stand for truth. Because silence is no longer an option. Let's be honest, it's one thing to admire a truth teller on stage. It's another thing to count the cost of speaking truth yourself. Charlie Kirk has built a platform that constantly puts him in the line of fire. His words are dissected, criticized, mocked. Headlines attack him. Social media censors him. Opponents call for his silence. And yet he keeps speaking. Why? Because once you see truth, you can't unsee it. Once you know the weight of deception, you can't ignore it. That's exactly what the prophets felt. Take Amos. He wasn't a professional prophet. He was a shepherd, a fig farmer. But when God gave him a word for the nation, he couldn't keep quiet. And when the king's priest told him to shut up and go home, Amos responded, "I was neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but the Lord took me from tending the flock and said to me, 'Go prophesy to my people, Israel.'" Amos 7:14. 15. In other words, I didn't choose this. God did. And I can't walk away. That's what it feels like when you're called to speak truth. Charlie Kirk isn't Amos, but the pattern is the same. The moment you step out to challenge corruption, to expose lies, to defend biblical truth, you step into fire. And here's the thing, fire isn't always a bad sign. Fire purifies. When the prophets faced opposition, when they were thrown into pits or mocked by crowds, the fire stripped away fear and left them with a sharper voice. That's happening today too. Look at the modern church. Every time a believer is censored, it wakes more people up. Every time someone is attacked for holding to biblical values, it sparks deeper conversations. Every time a voice under fire refuses to back down, it gives courage to others. This is exactly what Jesus promised. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. Matthew 5:11, 12. Notice what he said. He didn't say if, he said when. Persecution isn't a possibility, it's a certainty. And yet it's also a blessing, because persecution proves that your voice is striking a nerve, that the enemy feels threatened, that the truth is being heard. So what happens when someone like Charlie Kirk continues to speak despite the fire? Two things. First, enemies rise louder. Second, revival spreads deeper. That's why the devil always miscalculates. He thinks silencing one voice ends the message, but in reality, it multiplies it. Think of Stephen in the book of Acts, the first martyr of the church. His death seemed like defeat. But it says, after his stoning, the believers scattered, and everywhere they went, they preached the gospel. One silenced voice became 1,000 louder voices, and that's what's happening today. The louder the attacks on voices like Charlie Kirk, the more people start asking, what are they so afraid of? What truth is so dangerous that it must be silenced? And that question leads people straight to Jesus. Still with me, good? Because here's the part that hits home. You don't need a stage or a microphone to be a voice under fire. You might be the only Christian in your workplace. You might be the only believer in your family. You might be the only person willing to stand against compromise in your circle. And that makes you a target. But it also makes you a light. Jesus said in Matthew 5:14, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." That's the call. Not to hide, not to dim, but to shine even when it costs you. So here's the wreck hook. If Charlie Kirk can take fire on a national stage, can't we take fire in our daily lives? If prophets endured prisons and pits, can't we endure ridicule and rejection because the truth is worth it? And here's the prophetic reality. The more we get closer to the last days, the more intense the fire will become. Jesus said in Matthew 24:9, "Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me." That's not a scare tactic. That's preparation. We're seeing glimpses. Already, voices censored, churches pressured, believers mocked. But this is just the beginning. The good news prophecy doesn't stop there. Yes, there will be fire. But fire produces revival. Yes, there will be opposition. But opposition produces courage. Yes, there will be persecution. But persecution produces growth. The enemy thinks he's shutting us down. But in reality, he's setting us up for the greatest move of God in history. So when you see Charlie Kirk under fire, don't just see a man in controversy. See a prophetic sign. See a reminder of what the prophets foretold. See a wake-up call for the church. And let it drive you to one question. Will I be silent or will I stand? Because the last days don't need silent Christians. They need courageous ones. And if you're still watching, I believe you're one of them. So drop a comment, "I will not be silent." Because in part 3, we'll explore the hope beyond the fire. The revival prophets foresaw the harvest that persecution will unlock, and how God always turns opposition into opportunity. You don't want to miss it. What if the fire we fear is actually the fire that sets revival ablaze? Think about it. Every time in history when truth-tellers were silenced, their message grew stronger. Every time the church was pushed underground, it multiplied. Every time prophets were mocked, their words came true. And that's exactly what the prophets foresaw for the last days. Not just darkness, not just persecution, but a harvest. Charlie Kirk's battles aren't just about one man. They're a prophetic picture of what happens when truth collides with deception in the end times. The prophet said it clearly: the days will come when nations rage, when evil rises, when voices of truth are attacked. But they also said, this God will pour out His Spirit like never before. Joel 2:28 promises, in the last days I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions. That means while the enemy is raising opposition, God is raising voices. And not just one or two, not just Charlie Kirk or any other public figure, but an army of everyday believers, so students, workers, parents, pastors who refuse to stay silent. The fire will be real, but so will the Spirit. Still with me? Good, because here's the hope. That persecution doesn't destroy the church, it defines it. Jesus never promised comfort. He promised courage. He never said we'd avoid trouble. He said he'd overcome the world. And the very attacks meant to weaken us will awaken us. Imagine this: Charlie Kirk under fire. Churches under fire. Believers mocked, censored, pushed aside. At first, it looks like defeat. But beneath the surface, hearts are stirred. People who never cared about faith start asking questions. Young believers get bold. Families gather to pray. Revival breaks out in unexpected places. That's how God works. When Pharaoh tried to crush Israel, God raised Moses. When Babylon tried to erase Daniel, God gave him visions. When Rome tried to crucify Jesus, God raised him from the dead. The enemy's greatest weapon always backfires, and it will again. So here's the wreck hook. When you see fire in the culture, don't panic. See prophecy, see promise, see preparation. Because the prophets didn't just warn of persecution. They pointed to a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Hebrews 12:28 says, "Since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe." America may shake, Venezuela may shake, governments may fall, voices may be silenced, but God's kingdom, it stands forever. And if you belong to Christ, so do you. That means the same Spirit that emboldened Jeremiah, that strengthened Amos, that filled Isaiah, that raised Jesus from the grave, that Spirit is in you. So let me ask, will you hide your voice, or will you let it burn? Because the world doesn't need another silent Christian. The world needs courageous ones. Charlie Kirk's story isn't just about politics or culture wars or headlines. It's about prophecy. It's about what happens when truth refuses to bow. It's about a glimpse of what the last days will look like. Hard, yes, but also holy. And the call isn't just for him. It's for you. The prophets weren't superhuman. They were ordinary people with extraordinary obedience. And that's what God is asking of us now. Ordinary obedience, ordinary boldness, ordinary faithfulness every day in every place. Because when ordinary believers choose to stand extraordinary, revival follows. Friend, if you've walked through all three parts of this journey with me, you know this: the fire is real, the cost is high, but the reward is eternal. So what's next? You pray, you prepare, you proclaim. You pray for voices like Charlie Kirk under fire daily. You pray for pastors and leaders in your own city. You pray for boldness in your own life. You prepare your heart, knowing persecution will come, but so will God's presence. And you proclaim truth at your dinner table, in your classroom, at your job, on your social media. Because silence is no longer an option. And when history looks back, may it not say that we stayed quiet. May it say we stood. The prophets foresaw it. Jesus promised it. The Spirit empowers it. Now it's your turn to live it. So right now, if this word has stirred your heart, hit like. Subscribe for more, and leave a comment. I will stand for truth in the last days. Because the battle is real, the fire is here. But the victory is already written, and the best is still to come.